All right, Taylor from the Gloucester Times joins us once again to fill us in on all things happening around here, and it is a lot. Why don't we start with the numbers from the beaches?
Yeah, so I know it's getting colder here in the city, and we're all starting to think about what our fall fashion's going to be and how we're going to bundle up. But if we want to take it back a few months to when the beaches were popping here in the city, even despite a pandemic, the city saw a rise in beach parking revenue this year. Actually, numbers that are far exceeding numbers in the past, I want to say 5 years, is that, the beach parking revenue for the fiscal year 2020 was $1,709,737. So in comparison, fiscal year 2019 saw 1,482,655. And that number, about $1.4 million, is what's been consistent throughout the years. And so I had the opportunity to speak with John Dunn, who's the city's chief financial officer, and kind of talk about, why this is the case. Why did the numbers increase even during the pandemic when, the mayor had signs saying, don't come to Gloucester, trying to keep people out, kind of similar to what Mayor Kim Driscoll's doing in Salem now for Halloween. The mayor of Gloucester was doing for the beaches here over the summer, is saying, don't come. I know we have the best beaches around town, but we want to mitigate the spread of COVID. And John said that, despite limiting the number of tourists here in the city, is that, one, the weather was just fantastic this summer. And so people are getting out as much as possible. But then also, you remember, kids weren't in school May and June. So their parents were like, what are we going to do? Let's go to the beach. I was even doing a story during the middle of the summer, and I was like interviewing people on the beach, and I ran into a guy with his laptop working, just working from the beach, saying, if I can work from the beach, then why not? And so I think people are really utilizing the spaces around here. And so those were like the big ticket reasons for why people are still coming to the city, which is, seeing that uptick, is crazy. And John is saying, even for this current fiscal year, fiscal 2021, is they're already at, if we look at, fiscal 2020 year ended around June 30th. And so looking from June 30th to now, the city has already raised $1,359,166 for this fiscal year alone. So think about where we're going to be come this time next year in June is crazy. And so while those numbers has risen, the beach sticker revenue in the city actually dropped, or kind of was pretty light this year. And John was saying, the reason for that is that because they were trying to limit who came to the beaches, the non-residents weren't getting stickers. That number kind of dwindled a little bit, but he said they're not concerned about that at all. That was to be expected because they're limiting it. And the reason for the rise in beach parking revenue is also just due to, they were raising the prices to $35 for parking, which it makes sense when you're trying to even things out. So that's what's happening at the beaches. Now, I was over there the other morning with a friend surfing, and it is freezing cold. People are still going. It's, off season, but people are still loving to come here and visit the area, even when it's getting colder and colder and colder.
Yeah. So Taylor, you also have news from school committee.
Yes, so the school committee met last Wednesday, and in that meeting they had a brief conversation, but a unanimous decision to, if and when the combined elementary school of East Gloucester and Veterans does occur over on Webster Street, they will be renaming the new playground at that location Mado's Playground. So they said it makes sense. There shouldn't even be a question about naming it, just because there's been a lot of back and forth about Mado's softball field, and that trying to preserve the memory and the efforts put in by all the people in Gloucester to bring lights in, really make that place look beautiful. They wanted to say, we want to still commemorate Joseph Mados, who's the private who that softball field was dedicated after. And so they made the decision that if and when the playground is built, that they will name it after. Now that will be at the new location, which is the Veterans Memorial Site. We remember that East Gloucester is going to be put into surplus to the city once the transition happens. And so Jonathan Pope, the school committee chairperson, was talking about how they as a school committee don't have jurisdiction over naming anything in the city property. So, what East Gloucester, that open space will be called, is up to the city when and if that does occur. So if people are wondering, what will that be named? I think that's a decision for city council. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay, and there is also some news about Soy Free Library.
Yeah, so there had been a couple of different, the city were calling them rumors of just the Soy Free Library potentially being torn down. There had been a couple of different comments on Facebook and people just citing Dorian Whittier, who are the architectural designers for the school, the potential combined elementary school, and saying that, if places like the school are going to be torn down, Sawyer Free is next. And so that discussion was kind of going, and people were going back and forth and kind of discussing, open spaces and protecting the area and protecting the historic buildings here in the city. And it seemed that things might have got lost in translation, and people started, as the mayor had told me, is kind of things got out of hand in terms of people calling her up and being really distressed that the Soy Free Library was going to be torn down. After I did a follow-up call with members of the library, they confirmed that that is not happening, and that in fact they're actually enhancing the building that they have. So if you guys remember that there has been a Soy Free Library enhancement project that's been in the woodwork for quite a while now, and they're now almost starting their campaign, capital campaign, and so looking at that as kind of the near future, but it's not going to be torn down. They're looking at, the potential reopening whenever that can occur. And so, the library, they've even said they had like about 100 people calling in to do pickup and drops off. So the library is still very active during the pandemic. People want to get their books in and read and just be able to get the resources from the library. But yeah, the library is not being torn down, but it is, going to be looking a lot nicer come 2023 when they're looking to break ground in renovating that and the surrounding areas. So
Great.
And lastly, let's talk about this leaf competition.
Yeah, so the foliage is leaving us so sadly. But if you guys had the chance to read the Woods to the Writing Desk column last week, we gave the city a challenge to see who could send us the most beautiful leaf of 2020. We call it the Fat Leaf Week 2020, PHAT, extraordinary is what that means. And so we got so many submissions, and just want to say that we have chosen as an editorial staff this year's fattest leaf. And so that'll be coming in the column tomorrow or Friday. And so keep a lookout to see that leaf. And we're looking forward to next year's competition. So people should start picking their trees, looking their locations, finding their local trails. So that's been a joy and such a fun, light project to work on. So yeah, that news will be coming soon, but I should say it's quite a beaut. So.
Well, I just hope you're not like unnecessarily, you don't unnecessarily favor red leaves, because there's some really beautiful yellow leaves out there. You're right. I'm a little bit worried about that. I think that, and those red leaves always get all the credit.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. It's a mystery for now, but I'm just saying it smells pretty. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Taylor. See you next week.
Have a great weekend, y'all. Bye.
Great work. Okay. We're back once again with Erika Brown, the publisher and editor of the Manchester Cricket. Erika, we know there's a ton on your slate today. Let's get right to it.
Yeah, we do have a ton on our slate today. In terms of just a busy fall update, we have a lot of things there's a big summary in no particular order. I'll give you this. Number one, the Board of Selectmen last week, and this is all connected to the Board of Selectmen here in Manchester. Number one, restaurants have been asked to put down their Jersey barriers, which is the outdoor dining, by mid-November, November the 7th, I believe it is. And that's actually a little ahead of the state's recommendation. I think the state is recommending that those Jersey barriers come down in early December. And I don't know if Gloucester, I know that Main Street in Gloucester has a lot of those. I don't know when they're planning on bringing those down, do you know?
We don't know yet, no.
Yeah, but anyway, these decisions are being made now. November 7th is the date, and then we're immediately going to go into sort of the whole issue of supporting downtown around holiday and holiday shopping. So that's going on, and then related to that, perhaps, is what we talked about last week. They really did hear the mile per hour, the speed limit thing, and the interior of town, sort of the whole downtown experience. So that's related to what we're talking about, is going to be 20 miles an hour. So that's actually happening, which is really good, actually, I think, for downtown, to create a downtown that's walkable and friendly and all that. And then the other two things, there's a big thing next week where there's two interrelated things that are happening on Upper School Street, sort of the 128 area of Manchester, which is called the Limited Commercial District. So it's been zoned commercial, but a limited commercial. It's where the Manchester Athletic Club is. There's a industrial park there. There's Family Medicine Associates, and there's a medical building up on what's called Shingle Hill. And then across the street from there is where the 40B. So there's 40B going on, and then across the street from School Street along 128 is the 40R discussion. That's a big discussion, a lot of participation, complications, a lot of confusion, to be honest with you. One has to do with housing and affordable housing, and the other one has to do with sort of a Governor Baker related kind of 40R is an integrated commercial district. And the town did a big survey a couple weeks back for about a month about what people would like to go in there. And Greg Fetterspiel said that the people are registering that they want wellness in there, things that, you know, sort of amplify around the health club and the doctor's office and things like that. So there's going to be sort of this discussion about what's going to go there. And the big thing there is they don't want it to be competitive with downtown. And I think that's really smart because you don't want to get people to go to a new commercial area that's growing in town at the expense of the traditional downtown. So they're trying, planning is the big thing, right? So then the last thing that's going on is the recodification. We got an update last week from the planning board to the Board of Selectmen about their recodification process. It sounds so boring, and I think we've talked about this before, but it's very, very important. Once every 10 years, a municipality has to go through the process of streamlining and simplifying and eliminating all the patchwork to their zoning bylaws, and that's what they're doing. They've got an attorney. His name is Mark Bobrowski. Apparently he's done this recodification. He's sort of consulted with towns. He's done 100 of them. So they didn't get.
He lived to tell about it.
Got a guy right off the turnip truck. Yeah. But in any case, the recodification process is actually, it sounds boring, but it's not at all. It's very, very important. And it's going to be going through for the next 6 months. They've been doing it for 1.5 years, but it's going to be coming due and finalized for town meeting next spring. So the next 6 months are going to be, we're going to have a couple of public forums so that people can get public input. And do you remember when we were talking about the ADU issue? It's called accessory dwelling units. Mm-hmm. There was a big thing. Gary Gilbert, you remember that name? That guy who, he headed this up and before he got on the planning board. That's part of the recodification process, which is interesting because it's sort of a new addition to the zoning bylaws that's being proposed. And that's something that's going to see a lot of public input as well. And basically all you need to know there is, you know, it's when you want to have an au pair apartment or just an in-law apartment to your dwelling and making that legal. And the reason why that's important is for affordability. It gives people options. Say you bought your house on Lincoln Street in 1962 for like $12,000. Now that same house is probably worth about $900,000. Right. And what you need is sometimes if somebody is faced with either selling their home and never being able to afford living in Manchester again, these ADUs give them a little bit of flexibility to be able to either stay in the community they want to affordably, or if you're new and you're a young family or couple and you want to buy your first home, being able to have an accessory dwelling unit gives you options too for affordability. So it helps those people on either end of the spectrum. So, and also just, I mean, I'm babbling about it, but in Essex, they actually are exploring ADUs as well, but not because they're illegal, but because they're trying to encourage people to be able to use them. They never made them illegal. So you get to have an ADU in Essex as a matter of right. Manchester did away with that. I don't know exactly when, I'd have to ask Sue, but I would guess it's about 40 years ago. And so now they're trying to look at eliminating that challenge for people. So there's a ton going on.
While we have you for another minute, Erika, do you want to touch upon anything that has to do with early voting?
Yeah, I voted early last week. They opened up early voting on Saturday. There was quite a line around the corner. they said that they opened up to about 100 people wanting to vote. I went on Sunday, and when I went, it was really easy. And it was a fantastic experience. We have a brand new interim town clerk. Her name is Sharon George. She lives in Gloucester. She was actually Gloucester's town clerk for 12 years a while back, and then went to, I believe it was Winchester. But in any case, we have her for at least a year, and she's going to be overseeing all the early voting. And I saw her on Sunday. She was there with her daughter, and it couldn't have been easier.
Great.
Cool.
That's good to know.
All right, we'll be back in touch next week, Erika, and we want to talk about the scouts that recently visited. Yeah,
we actually did a communications badge for the scouts. There were 12 of them, and they knocked out an episode of Scoop Manchester with Liz Brown Swanson, and it's going to be airing on 1623. It was so much fun. They had a great time.
Great.
There you have it. All right, thanks. We'll see you next week, Erika.
Bye.
Bye.